never had a fair shot. All black everything, everything black, culture over everything, y'all, we taking it back, black.
Welcome to Left to Black. I'm your host, Mark Anthony Neal. We're joined today by longtime journalist and founding editor, managing editor of SeeingBlack.com, Esther Iverem from Washington, D.C. And we're also joined by Professor Stephane Dunn, who is a professor of English at Morehouse College, where she also directs the Cinema, Television, and Emerging Media Studies program. She's the author of the book, Bad Bitches and Sassy Supermamas, Black Popular Action Pictures, University of Illinois Press. And I wanted to have you both on today to talk about, since it is the season of cinematic awards, the Oscars coming up shortly, to just talk a little bit about, the nominations that we saw, the kind of black films that got recognized, and then talk about the general state of black cinema. This kind of disconnect between what black people go to see and what black people like, and what the critics find significant. Let me start with this first question. When we look at the Best Actor category, when we look at the supporting actress and actor category, where we do have black folks nominated, does it strike you at all that neither of these folks would be defined along a kind of early 20th century racial description as Negroes? Is there a disconnect between what film critics see in terms of African American actors working through an African American experience, as opposed to what we might think of as more diasporic black figures? I mean, this also relates to Steve McQueen, as the director of 12 Years a Slave. What do you think these nominations say about how critics and Americans really think about the lives of actual African Americans?
If I may jump in. Hi, how are you? Thank you, Mark, for having me. And hi, Esther. I'm so happy to be on with a fellow film fanatic that I love, whose work I love. But what really strikes me about this award season, and this is unfortunate, because I anticipated that since we had what I think is a fairly rare season, if you will, of black experience sort of films. And I mean, you think Fruitvale, you think The Butler, Mother George, who people may or may not know about, 12 Years a Slave. There were a number of really strong films. And what's interesting is that I read an article in GQ magazine in November, and here's what their prediction was. It was that the sizzling performances of the year came from a number of black actors who were actually good enough, great enough to be Best Actor Oscar nods. But you know what the GQ magazine author basically said? Well, what chances are there that there's going to be a blackout in the Oscar, the Oscar Best Actor nod when you've got the likes of Tom Hanks and other folks? How many of those black actors?
Right, Robert Redford, right, yeah.
Right, how many are really going to make it into the black actor category? And unfortunately, I thought to myself, what is this award season going to do with this many great performances? Because I feared that several would be basically forgotten, not in contention, because the racial politics of Hollywood, quite frankly, are not that race blind that you would have the possibility of a Michael B. Jordan and a Idris Elba and a 12 Years of Slave, Chiwetel Ejiofor all being nominated. That was probably an impossibility.
Esther?
Well, when I look at the list, I think about the Oscars kind of embracing, like American nationalism and a real kind of nationalist narrative in the nominees. So that, even though Idris Elba received a Golden Globe nomination, he didn't win, but he did receive a nomination at least. But he didn't even receive a nomination here. But when you look at the other stories that did receive an Oscars nomination, talk about Nebraska, American Hustle,
Nice, yeah.
Captain Phillips,
Yeah.
In terms of either the Best Picture nominee or the Best Actor nominee, and those are really two pivotal, nomination categories to let you know what Americans or these critics, the people who get to vote in the Academy are embracing what they're, those are two key categories. So when you look at those nominees, at least, I think that you have this embracing of American narrative. and also a distancing of what is the most important human rights struggle of the 20th century, which is the South African struggle.
Yeah.
So Idris Elba doesn't get a nomination. Mandela doesn't get a nomination. I didn't see it in any category. So that's what I really looked at. That's what I came away with when I looked at that list.
If you're a professional black actor, who's been doing this for a while, has been on the grind for a while, and your colleagues recognize you as being good at your craft, what kind of message gets sent, again, when we look at some of these supporting actress nominations in particular, in the case of Barad Abdi, in the case of Lupita Nyong'o, folks who are in their first film role. I mean, this is something that kind of came up with Monique a few years ago, with Jennifer Hudson a few years ago. What does it mean that these kind of first time out the box actors get nods, and the people who have been putting the work in for a while, don't get that same kind of confirmation from the Academy? And we could talk about how relevant the Academy Awards are, but what does that say to working black actors who've been putting their time in for a long time?
It speaks to the continued lack of really a rich array of material that these awards, like the Golden Globes and the Oscar nominations, love to heap praise upon. There's still a lack of the type of, quote, roles, right, that are bound for Oscar attention and Golden Globe attention. And I'll add another dimension to that. What happens to these actresses after those roles?
Right.
How many roles are they going to get? I mean, there's a reason Meryl Streep has the career she does. And the fact that she is enormously talented is one part of the story. But the other part of the story for her and Kate Blanchett and Kate Winslet and so forth is that they keep getting the opportunities, right, to show those amazing chops.
Or Leonardo DiCaprio or Tom Hanks, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Matthew McConaughey was allowed to come back, right? Even given some of the choices he's made in his career.
And if you also look at the actress who was in Fruitvale Station, I'm sorry, if you look at the actress who was in Fruitvale Station, she just won the Oscar for The Help, right?
Right. Octavia, right.
But what came to her next? I don't think very much came to her next, and she wound up taking a piece in an independent film. And I remember the director saying how surprised he was that she took it. But
right.
When I heard that, I wasn't surprised because she probably didn't have that very
options,
much,
right?
So I think that that's just a prime example right there.
You're watching Left of Black. We're joined today by Esther Iverem, a longtime managing founder and editor of SeeingBlack.com, longtime commentator on Black film and a range of other media. We're also joined by Professor Stephane Dunn from Morehouse College, where she directs, and let me get this straight again, the Cinema, Television, and Emerging Media Studies program at Morehouse. I want to talk about Fruitvale for a second. My colleague, Ed Pavlik, wrote an interesting piece about John Ridley's recent interview on NPR. And John Ridley, of course, was a screenwriter for 12 Years a Slave. And what came up in Ed's piece is that there's a narrative in 12 Years a Slave that really reduces American slavery to this individual story of this one man who overcomes, right? And there's a way in which 12 Years a Slave actually has, once you sit through 12 Years a Slave, it hasn't had a happy ending. And Hollywood loves those happy endings.
Okay.
Fruitvale doesn't give us that kind of happy ending, right? This is the film that, if you sit there and watch it, you have to think about Trayvon Martin, right? You have to think about the reality of stop and frisk. There were many folks, and both of you, wrote about the power of Fruitvale Station. I think many of us had expectations that Fruitvale would get so much more attention. Michael B. Jordan, and I go back with him not just in terms of talking about him playing Wallace on The Wire, but watching him on All My Children, watching him on, a favorite show of mine, but Parenthood is one of the whitest shows on television. And so he's been in a range of things, and it would have been an incredible statement for him to even get a Golden Globe nomination in this context. But why doesn't a film like Fruitvale get the kind of attention that it deserves? And this is not to say that we don't need to go and rehash and deal with the realities of slavery in American society in our cinematic depictions of it, but why does that film not get the kind of support that it deserved?
So, a couple of things come to mind. And the first, though, is that Fruitvale is a victim of what a number of other films are, including Mother George. I mean, people kind of have focused on this, why didn't Oprah get nominated and so forth. That, you know, they've made that kind of in the Best Supporting Actress. No attention really to this Fruitvale shutout, and really a couple of other films by black actors, even one by Isaiah Washington that was really strong this year, by the way, in the other film. But I will say that I think that Michael B. Jordan and Fruitvale really are a victim of the inability of still of the Academy, I think, of the powers that be, to really be able to fairly consider and fairly, I think, embrace simultaneously a number of stories that have, you know, that reflect, you know, black oriented experience. It's a very limited, you know, pool of films. It's like they like one darling per year, right? It's The Help that year. Yeah. It's, you know, Wild Beasts of the Southern Wild that year. I felt like literally this year, what was going to happen with so many really strong contenders. And as I said, what was going to happen is that it was going to choose one. Now, why did it choose 12 Years a Slave ultimately, in anyways, in terms of the Oscars? I think you're right that, yes, you do have a story that is kind of quintessentially got this American story of, in the end, you know, the wrong is somewhat righted. Although I think that the movie it does a way better nuanced job of leaving us to feel very ambiguous about that ending, because we cannot get over Patsy standing there at the end of that film. I mean, my thoughts were with who was left behind, as I think he tried to portray Solomon's work, right? So he didn't completely give it, but I'm not surprised that Hollywood would embrace it as such. Whereas Fruitvale is too close for comfort. It's contemporary. It's now. It's by the life of a young black man who would be associated in sort of the hip hop generation. And I'm sorry, but there's not that much vulnerability or compassion associated with that particular identity.
Yeah, I guess I disagree a little bit about how, you know, 12 Years a Slave was, you know, kind of, I wouldn't marginalize it that way. I don't think it's all about a happy ending. I think that it was one of the more, like, just really horrific depictions of slavery. And I don't really think that there is a happy ending. I would agree with Stephanie on that. And so the whole, it's really hard to compare it to Fruitvale Station. I think that Fruitvale Station is a smaller budget independent film that didn't have the real you know, kind of, it didn't have the kind of bigger budget feel that the other film had, and a lot of the other nominations had. And a lot of those films get kind of short shrift every year. You know, I do think that, and I agree that, you know, in terms of the narrative that it presents, it's a little bit too raw. Perhaps the actual low budget nature of it makes it a little bit too raw. It makes it easier to ignore. It makes it easier.
First time director, right?
Yeah, it makes it easier for the Academy to ignore. And if they had to choose one, I'm not sure it's because it's a so-called happy ending. I just think that there are a lot of things in terms of production values and writing and other things that make 12 Years a Slave a much richer movie with a lot more moving parts to it. So, you know, that's what I would
Or even what you said earlier, right? It's much more of an American story.
And I would add distribution too. I mean, it's also about distribution, right? In Atlanta alone, I'm continuing to be amazed, and this is Atlanta, where we know there is a sizable, you know, black, you know, population, as well as a whole black cultural rich environment. And you would be amazed at how few theaters, right, screened Fruitvale, and how few even at first initially screened 12 Years a Slave. I had to go across town to actually, you know, I'd seen it months earlier when it was just doing some premieres, but when I went to support it at the movie theaters when it came out, I had to go way across town because there were only several theaters even showing 12 Years a Slave, and that was by more of an established director who had a little bit some pub. So imagine Fruitvale Station, where I found, to be honest, informally, that a number of black folk, the first time they were hearing about Fruitvale was through me. I'm going to go see Fruitvale, but it did not get the marketing and so forth that you need the hype to really put steam under it.
Even with the Sundance push, right? I mean, that's I mean, because a lot of folks, if they did know about Fruitvale, it's because of the attention they got at Sundance, but that doesn't necessarily translate to it reaching to the kinds of audiences that a film like that needs to connect with. We're here with Professor Stephane Dunn, Morehouse College. We're also joined by Esther Iverem, a longtime editor of SeeingBlack.com. So let's just say a Martian comes from outer space and is trying to figure out what black film is in 2014. And I'm sure a Martian would think that the best representations of black film would be 12 Years a Slave, Django Unchained, The Butler, and Best Man 2, right? Where is black film now? Of all the things that you had the chance to screen, right? You have those wonderful jobs, right? Your job is to watch black film. Of all the things that you had this chance to see over the last year, either directed by a black director, featuring a black cast, a black theme, what were some of the favorites that you had the chance to screen this past year?
For me, definitely top of the list really was Mother George, 12 Years a Slave. It was Fruitvale. It was Mandela. And of course, I mean, I go see all kinds of films. So I saw Gravity. I saw, because I always want to know what certain folk are talking about, whether or not they're on point or this is much to do about, nothing. But those films were at the top of my list. Mother George was a beautiful little film by an African director, of course, and it had way limited run too, right. Even in Atlanta, one theater for a couple weeks. So,
yes, I had 12 Years a Slave. I had Mandela. I had Fruitvale Station. I also had Jeremy Scahill's documentary, Dirty Wars, and another documentary I saw about the second MOVE bombing.
Yes,
called Let the Fire Burn.
Right, that was a great,
and that movie was so mesmerizing to me. I'm from Philly, and I was actually still living there for a couple of years when that actually happened. And it's funny, my swimming teacher had served in Vietnam, and he said when he heard that from across the city, he knew it was a bomb, but that's getting into something else. But I had a number of things that, aren't on the Oscars list. For example, a small independent film out of Africa called The Pirogue. And I called it kind of like our modern day Middle Passage, kind of telling the story of all these people who get on these small fishing boats, really, and try to make their way to Europe, be it to Italy or to Spain, typically, because that's a close point. And, that was a very moving film to me. And, I had a number of other films, but those are some that come to mind right now.
Let's talk about that distribution piece for a moment. I'm a big fan of Ava DuVernay's work. I'd be lying if I said I've seen Middle of Nowhere. Because it literally didn't come to my region for me to be able to see it. And so what kind of challenge do you see that some filmmakers, black filmmakers, independent filmmakers in particular, are having, actually getting their films to these audiences, right? I know, Ava, for instance, has been involved with the Tug movement, where people get together and try to bring particular films for a weekend, someplace in their neighborhood. But it does present an incredible challenge, I would imagine, for some filmmakers at this period in time.
It seems to me that it continues to be a challenge despite technology, of course, and the internet. We do have unbelievable possibilities to access, more diverse audiences in more innovative and unique ways. But it's still a money game. It's still to get into those, to get into Regal and to AMC is still no easy trick, because that's owned by a small percentage elite group of people. And you have to be going to the right places. Those companies go to industry, functions. You almost, I think more black films have to be showing at the Sundances and what have you, because it really has become Sundance and, some of the other key film festivals. Some of these films, black and white, for example, we would not even hear of if critics didn't write about them as part of showing at Sundance. So I think there has to be, and I think Ava DuVernay, she's a perfect example, of being very, I think, strategic and wise and participating in the festivals that gave her sort of, first legs, I think, and more people knowing about her and opportunities to show her work. So that's absolutely essential. Some of the premier film festivals. But it's also, I think, if we ask the question, who is at the top? Who Black is at the top of the distribution game? They make the actual decisions. What's that list like? Whose name is on that list?
Yeah.
Now, I know one guy, I can't even think of his name but it was just like one, and everybody introduces him as, that's the one Black guy who actually is. That's like, before his name, they say, he's the one Black guy at major company that can help. But that's how elite it is, because we don't own distribution, and this continues to be a serious problem in terms of access.
And a lot of these exhibition houses presume a lot in terms of what they think local audiences want to see. And of course they're crunching all their information and all their data and all their numbers, and somewhere they're saying, well, Black people aren't going to want to go see this film. And it's not just Black film, right? It could be a range of other kinds of films.
But they especially do it to Black films, correct? 12 Years a Slave in Atlanta opened in like 2 or 3 theaters. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
Well, we really haven't touched on that issue in this conversation because we're talking about the Oscars. But I had a lot of really interesting conversations with Black people around not wanting to see it.
Yeah.
I will not see it.
Or my brother saw it, but I'm not going. And so, that might be another conversation for us. But there was a lot of ambivalence among a lot of us to see that film. And, even those of us who reviewed it, I read a review recently by a Black film critic, and, he was, he hated it. And I really wanted to have a conversation with him, as a Black male, because I have this running theory that's going through my head around a lot of the way a lot of Black men approach these narratives where they see the abuse and rape and murder of Black women around this, not wanting to see their inability to prevent that, or not wanting to face the vulnerability of Black women and children.
Right.
I recently curated an exhibit here, a visual arts exhibit, and one of the artists at the Artist Talk, she talked about, reading the slave narratives or other types of narratives that talked about Black men having to have conversations, Black, or maybe the father and the mother having to have a conversation with their daughters about how they might be raped, or maybe not even that they would be raped, and that they had to learn to survive it. This is what you do. This is how you act. And it was so chilling for me. And it made me think of 12 Years a Slave because of the prevalence of the rape and the abuse of the and the brutalization of the Black woman in the film. So, it might be a different conversation. We're talking about the Oscars, but really I just want to have a conversation with Black men, not only who write about film and art, but Black men who are thinking about these issues in terms of the Black male response, sometimes to seeing that type of narrative.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because if I have another conversation with both Black women and Black men that begins with, I'm so sick of those movies about slavery, and then I ask them, please name 10 Hollywood movies that actually dealt with American slavery, and I don't mean Cold Mountain. So there's also, there's a great antipathy, to movies that, if they got a slavery theme, I just can't go,
I mean, that's why Best Man did so well, right? Because, ironically, folks watched it not expecting to see any kind of trauma. They got it anyway, right? But they weren't expecting that. I mean, that was what was attractive. Like, we can forget all of that other stuff, again, post-Trayvon, the slavery narrative put in our face. We could just, go back and remember how we were 10, 15 years ago and enjoy a Black romantic comedy.
Yeah, and I think so many people didn't see any of those films except for maybe The Butler. And constantly I heard all these films are the same. And I'm going, Mother George, 12 Years a Slave, the butler and Fruitvale are the same. And basically what they meant is what we've been just saying, that,
Right.
well,
They have
it's
to deal with
about
trauma.
black
Right.
victimization
Right.
and
Right.
black people getting dumped on, and I just don't want to see any of that. And they literally just stayed away from all those movies. And I hate to say it, but that was a ton of people of the mass, just, movie going audience who were like, I got to be in the mood to see 12 Years a Slave, which probably ain't gonna never happen because I don't like slavery movies, and they're making too many movies about slavery. I'm like, Django was really not a movie about slavery.
I mean, that's why I saw the movie by myself. Oscars coming up. Any of these Negroes take home an award?
Best chances in the Best Actress category. At 12 Years a Slave, quite frankly, could get away with that bet, but I just really think that's a toss-up between, either there'll be a surprise and it'll be something like, I think Her is nominated too. It'll be a surprise, like quirky thing, or it'll be American Hustle or Gravity.
Right.
Or we may get stunned into 12 Years a Slave. But to be frank, I think the best chances come possibly in the Best Actress category if Hollywood's like, now look, Jennifer Lawrence is great and what have you, but wait a minute, in this role, because I do not think that there was a more rich, more compelling, just altogether stunning acting turn as my sister in 12 Years a Slave playing Pat.
Yep.
I stand by that.
Yeah, I think it's the Best Supporting Actress category that she's in, right? Yeah, Lupita. And then also, I would agree. I think that the best chance may be maybe I differ a little. I think that the best chance may be in Best Picture. I think that I would have actually preferred to see Idris Elba if they had to pick
between him and the Chiwetel.
Yeah, because in 12 Years a Slave, most of the passion comes from the female characters.
I agree.
It comes from Patsy. It comes from the other woman who was separated from her children, who was crying for most of the movie. And he's like, would you please shut up, So in many ways, he becomes somewhat of an unsympathetic character in some of it, because he's like, man, with this woman, with all this crying, so I just, in some ways, in some parts of the movie, he distances himself from the pain around him, in a sense. I mean, and I'm not saying that he's not sympathetic, but in some cases, some scenes, I think he distances himself from the other, enslaved people around him.
I totally agree. And I think the best actors who happen to be Black in a movie role in 2013 were not even nominated. And that was Idris Elba, and that was also Michael B. Jordan. Our young man. Absolutely, to me, deserved those nods before, our brother who's nominated. And not that he wasn't good, but his was not the standout performance. It's more that he was the main character, and it's a stunning film, and it's a stunning story, which is different from saying, in terms of, really, though, the portrayal, the Michael B. Jordan and, certainly Idris Elba, to me, warranted that nomination, and I was sorry that neither, received it.
And also, since we're mentioning these actors, we can't forget about this little mini British invasion that we have going on here.
Absolutely, Steve McQueen.
Steve McQueen, between Idris Elba, Chiwetel Ejiofor. I mean, everybody, even the brother who starred in Red Tails, and his name's not in front of me right now, but when you hear these people interviewed and they start talking in their English accent,
right? He's like, "What happened?" Right?
Isn't that brother on The Wire? Ain't he from Baltimore?
Yeah, complicating Blackness and our notion of all of that. I love it too. I love it.
So I just have to point that out a little bit, and I'm kind of throwing that around in my mind a little, and I have to correct you, Mark. I actually don't have the luxury of just looking at films and everything for a living.
I got you.
The media world has changed a lot. I do other things to kind of keep but I try to keep up as much as I can, because it's so important for us to have a voice and to even have this kind of conversation about our films.
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
Otherwise, our voices are silent.
Absolutely.
So.
We've been joined today by Esther Iverem, longtime managing editor, founder of SeeingBlack.com, and also Stephane Dunn, professor of English at Morehouse College, where she directs the program in cinema, television, and emerging media studies. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you, Mark.
Black lights and booze burn when I record for Watts, and every black like Troy Davis who never had a fair shot. All black everything, everything black, culture over everything, y'all. We taking it back.